Good day everyone, especially to our instructor, Mr. Matsunaka. Good day, sir. I am Arlando Longo Sapuras Jr., first year student at City Clover Extension. My report in Module 10 is all about psychological evaluation. Psychological evaluation. Topics: History, Asian psychological evaluation, modern psychological evaluation, and formal and informal evaluation. History. Modern psychological evaluation has been around for roughly 200 years, with roots that stem as far back as 2200 BC. It started in China, and many psychologists throughout Europe worked to develop methods of testing into the 1900s. The first test focused on aptitude. Eventually, scientists tried to gauge mental processes in patients with brain damage, then children with special needs. Asian psychological evaluation. Earliest accounts of evaluation are seen as far back as 2200 BC, when Chinese emperors were assessed to determine their fitness for office. These rudimentary tests were developed over time until 1370 AD, when an understanding of classical Confucianism was introduced as testing mechanism. As a preliminary evaluation for anyone seeking public office, candidates were required to spend one day and one night in a small space composing essay and writing poetry over assigned topics. Only the top 1% to 7% were selected for higher evaluations, which required three separate sessions of 3 days and 3 nights performing the same task. The process continued for one more round until a final group emerged, comprising less than 1% of the original group, became eligible for public office. The Chinese failure to validate their selection procedures, along with widespread discontent over such grilling process, resulted in the eventual abolition of the practice by royal decree. Modern psychological evaluation. In the 1080s, Hubert von Grachi developed a battery to determine the abilities of brain damaged patients. This test was also not favorable, as it took over 100 hours to administer. However, this influenced Wilhelm Wooden, who had the first psychological laboratory in Germany. Her tests were shorter but used similar techniques. Wooden also measured mental processes and acknowledged the fact that there are individual differences between people. Francis Galton established the first test in London for measuring IQ. He tested thousands of people, examining their physical characteristics as a basis for the result, and many of records remain today. James Cattell studied with him and eventually worked on his own with brass instruments for evaluation. His study led to his paper, Mental Test and Measurement, one of the most famous writing on psychological evaluation. He also coined the term mental test in this paper. As the 1900 began, Alfred Binet was also studying evaluation. However, he was more interested in distinguishing children with special needs from their peers after he could not prove in his other research that magnets could cure hysteria. He did his research in France with the help of Tudor Simon. They created a list of questions that were used to determine if children would receive regular instruction or would participate in special education programs. Their battery was continually revised and developed until 1911, when the Binet-Simon questionnaire was finalized for different age levels. After Binet's death, intelligence testing was further studied by Charles Spearman. He theorized that intelligence was made up of several different subcategories, which were all interrelated. He combined all that factors together to form a general intelligence, which he abbreviated as G. This led to William Stern's idea of intelligence quotient. He believes that children of different ages should be compared of their peers to determine their mental age and relation to their chronicle age. Lewis Terman combined the Binet-Simon questionnaire with the intelligence quotient, and the result was the standard test we use today with an average score of 100. The large influx of non-English speaking immigrants into the US brought about a chance of psychological testing that relied heavily on verbal skill for subjects that were not literate in English or had speech hearing difficulties. In 1913, R.H. Sylvester standardized that first nonverbal psychological test. In this particular test, participants fit different triple blocks into their respective slots on a sequence form board. From this test, Knox developed a series of nonverbal psychological tests that he used while working at the Ellis Island Immigrant Station in 1914. In this test, we are a simple wooden puzzle as well as digit symbol substitution test where each participant saw digits paired up with a particular symbol. They were then shown the digits and had to write in the symbol that we associated with it. When the United States moved into World War I, Robert M. Yerkes convinced the government that they should be testing all the recruits they were receiving into the Army. The result of the test could be used to make sure that the mental incompetent and mentally exceptional were assigned to appropriate jobs. Yerkes' colleagues developed their Army Alpha and Army Beta tests to use on all new recruits. This test set as precedent for the development of psychological testing for the next several decades. After seeing the success of the Army standardized test, college administration quickly picked up an idea of group testing to decide entrance into their institution. The College Entrance Examination Board was created to test applicants to colleges across the nation. In 1925, they developed tests that were no longer easy to test that were very open to interpretation, but now were objective tests that were also the first to be scored by machine. These early tests evolved into modern-day college board tests like the Scholastic Assessment Test, Graduate Record Examination, and the Law School Admission Test. Formal and informal evaluation. Formal psychological evaluation consists of standardized batteries of tests that highly structured clinician run interviews, while informal evaluation takes on a completely different tune. In informal evaluation, assessments are based on structured, free-flowing interviews or observation that allow both the patient and the clinician to guide the content. Both of these methods have their pros and cons. A highly structured interview and informal observation provide key findings about the patient that are both efficient and effective. A potential issue with an unstructured and formal approach is the clinician may overlook certain areas functioning or not notice them at all, or they might focus too much on the presenting complaints. The highly structured interview, although very precise, can cause the clinician to make the mistake of focusing on a specific answer to a specific question without considering the response in terms of broader scope or life context. They may fail to recognize how the patient answer all fit together. There are many ways that the issue associated with the interview process can be mitigated. The benefits no more formal standardized evaluation types such as batteries and tests are many. First, they measure a large number of characteristics simultaneously. These include personality, cognitive, and neuropsychological characteristics. Second, these tests provide empirically qualified information. The obvious benefit to this is that we can more precisely measure patient characteristics as compared to any kind of structured or unstructured interview. Third, all these tests have standardized way of being scored or being administered. Each patient is presented an standardized stimulus that serve as a benchmark that can be used to determine their characteristic. This type are tests eliminate any possibility of bias and produce results that could be harmful to the patient and cause legal and ethical issues. Fourth, tests are not norm. This means that patients can be assessed not only based on their comparison to a normal individual, but how they compare to the rest of their peers who may have same psychological issues that they face. Norm tests allow to clinician to make a more individualized assessment of the patient. Fifth, standardized tests that we commonly use today are both valid and reliable. We know that a specific score means how reliable they are and how the result will affect the patient. Most clinicians agree that balanced battery of tests is the most effective way of helping patients. Clinicians should not become victims of blind adherence to any one particular method. A balanced battery of tests allow there to be a mix of formal testing process that allow the clinician to start making their assessment while conducting more informal. Unstructured interview with the same patient may help the clinician to make more individualized evaluation and help piece together what could potentially be very complex, unique to the individual kind of issue or problem.